Thanks, everybody. Matt Amundson, I'm the Parks and Recreation Director here for the City of Whitewater. I've been here for 8 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, a little bit about Park and Rec, and then a little bit about the advice I give to those considering or entering the field. I grew up in a really small town. I had 45 kids in my graduating class. Had a lot of cool experiences because of that. I started working with our youth basketball program my sophomore year of high school. Coming in Saturday morning, coaching the kids. If you've played sports, usually at Whitewater, almost everybody's played sports at some point in their life. I've had a similar experience. So I kind of kept on with that. I worked for the recreation program in the summer, coaching a lot of youth baseball, youth softball, did that for 5 years. By the time I graduated in both basketball and baseball, I turned around and coached my teammates the summers after I graduated with their both basketball and baseball in their summer leagues and Legion ball and those kind of things. Did a lot of coaching early on. Went to college, went to lacrosse, started out in math. Wasn't sure what I was going to do. Eventually figured out secondary education, math, and for a wide variety of reasons ended up in recreation. Mostly because there were no more numbers in math by Calc 3. That was one of the problems, and then the other problem was I didn't want to be in a classroom for 40 years teaching the same thing every day. And from that perspective, made the right call. I love what I do, something different every day. After graduating, I did an internship with the City of Appleton. And for those of you that someday you'll be looking to do an internship, a lot of different majors, different fields do internships. Probably the single most important decision I made was a great experience. Put me in a large department, got to learn a lot, and they never treated me like an intern. Really got to be kind of a frontline staff. One of the first things I remember from my internship, and they had kind of told me, we're going to have you spend more time in parks, because I'd done a lot of recreation programming coming in to the internship. And on the Friday of my first week, their park operations manager suddenly retired without a lot of warning. And so one of the first things I got thrown was, here's $85,000, you've got 3 playgrounds to build. Without really any further direction than that, but basically pick out the equipment and figure it out. So, you know, that in that retrospect, really got to do a lot of hands-on things. Got involved on the park operations side, got to flood ice rinks, got to go out with the forestry crew, trim trees. Really got to see the whole big picture. During my internship, I got offered a position with the Boys and Girls Club in Appleton. I was their first team director. Survived the 9 months, which was the national average at the time for an entry-level Boys and Girls Club employee. I don't know if anyone from Boys and Girls Club or YMCA settings spoken to you guys. A lot of similarities with Parks and Recreation, a lot of differences. One of my frustrations of the Boys and Girls Club is that everything we did from a programming standpoint, it really wasn't how it impacted the kids, it was how it brought more dollars into the facility. So if we did something that was really big for 1 or 2 kids, like go to Chicago for a leadership retreat, that got publicity in the paper, or made a newsletter and somebody wrote a check because they thought that was cool. But taking 20 kids to the local children's museum to volunteer with younger kids every day all summer long gets no publicity, but probably had a bigger impact for larger league kids. And when you're working in that not-for-profit YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, a lot of different organizations like that, a lot of what you do is focused on how you bring more money into the facility. And not always from a programming standpoint, but, you know, losing donors and spending a lot of time with trying to figure out that aspect of the business operation. After my 9 months at the Boys and Girls Club, I applied to a bunch of different park and rec positions and ended up in Coralville, Iowa. Anybody from Iowa? Okay. Coralville's probably the one of 2 places in Iowa that I thought was maybe okay. It's funny, I was a big baseball player in high school, got recruited by a couple of colleges in Iowa and told them there was no way I was going to college in Iowa. But I really enjoyed the 3 years I was there. Coralville had an average age of 29. It's the only place I've ever been from a municipality standpoint where money really wasn't an issue. I run and use soccer, we didn't have enough fields. We had to cut cut off registration. We could have picked whatever number we wanted to charge. Kids were just overrunning the place. A lot of young families. The time I was in Coralville, I was there 3 years. I started out as a school site coordinator where I was responsible for before and after school program, summer camp, and then any of the rec programs or rentals that we had at that facility. So really was responsible for the school during non-school hours. In that, I had the opportunity shortly thereafter to move up. I was in that position for about 1.5 years and took over youth and adult sports. And was fortunate for that opportunity because that's really what I wanted to do, or what I thought I wanted to do. The 3 years I was there, Coralville spent a lot of money. We did a $2.5 million aquatic center, outdoor aquatic center. They did a bond referendum on it, so voting authorization, 92% approval. The following summer, they did an $8.5 million expansion of the library that passed on a 98% approval. Really unique in that the community was very forward-thinking, did a great job of engaging the citizens and publicizing what they were doing and kind of telling the story of the city. And because of that, they had a lot of great response in voting situations like that. They also did an $18 million renovation expansion of a 9-hole golf course to make it 18. They did a $45 million hotel and convention center that was built on top of my adult softball fields. So they built a new $3 million adult softball field complex, and we were in the planning stages of a $7 million youth sports complex. Like I said, it's the only place I've ever been where there was money to spend because the town was growing so fast. The tax base just kept growing. It was a cool situation, but I jumped at the chance to come back to Wisconsin, which was the home state, and took a position with Appleton as a rec programmer, mostly responsible for youth sports programming. Had some other responsibilities while I was there as well, and actually got into the park side a little bit of park planning and development while I was in Appleton too. After being there 3 years, career goal was to be a park and rec director by the time I was 30 in a town between Madison and Milwaukee. So I kind of was fortunate in at least my career goal being able to meet that. I've been here in Whitewater since 2007. A lot of challenges, a lot of things that we've accomplished over that 8-year time frame. When I replaced the director, he had been here 18 years, and the rec programmer had been here 14 years, and they both announced their resignation the same week. The park director went to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and the rec programmer took a teaching position in the Whitewater School District, that's still here in town. So one of the first things I got to do was hire my own programmer. And we balance each other really well. For those that are fans of Park and Rec, I'm the Leslie Nope of the group. I've got a binder and organized and detailed, and she's the fun people person that people like. I tend to be the guy who spends most of my time trying to upset everybody equally, because a lot of times you end up having to make decisions that aren't always popular. In some of the things in Whitewater that we've done is the past staff really had no interest in youth sports. I think one of the reasons why I was hired was because I had a lot of experience in youth sports and came into the position, and we added youth sports programming across the board. It's been the biggest growth area. When I started in 2007, the department ran 61 programs and brought in about $30,000 in revenue. This year, we're on pace to run about 250 programs and come close to $250,000 in total revenue. And our biggest growth area, there's been two. It used to be just youth sports, and then last school year we added the after-school program with the elementary schools, all 3 elementary schools in the district. We run a program and employ after-school leaders to work with the kids after school on homework, activities, a lot of fun programming. Emily can tell you all about it sometime. But and we employ, I think there's about 25 university students that work in that program at the 3 after-school sites. Other things that, a lot of you may be familiar with Trayton's Field of Dreams, which is the new synthetic turf baseball field at Starren Park. We were looking at adding a 4th field. We needed to add a 4th field because of just the growth of our baseball and softball programming. And Unfortunately, well, at the time, we'd acquired a house along Fremont Street, and we're planning to raise the house, tear it down, and build a new field there. And around the same time that was happening, we had a tragedy in the community. A 6-year-old boy was killed in a drunk driving accident, and his family really rallied the community and a lot of people together, including the university, to raise funds for trades field dreams. To date, a little over $800,000 has been raised to build the field that's there and do some other things in the park as well. It's been a tremendous asset to our facilities. We added 8 youth baseball and softball tournaments last summer, brought 118 teams to Whitewater, and those were tournaments that we really didn't offer before. A lot of you are probably familiar with youth baseball, softball tournaments and the amount of time, energy, and money that people spend in that endeavor. We were fortunate that we were able to bring those teams in because not only did they participate in our tournament, they spent the nights in hotels here in Whitewater, they visited local gas stations, they ate in our local restaurants, and the economic impact to the region is significant. If you look at what Warhawk Athletics means to Whitewater and the amount of people it brings in the community, the university itself as well, but those people come, they spend money, and we hope they enjoy the community and either want to send their children here to college or even consider moving to the community someday. Advice and things that I typically try and give college students, we see a lot of students either come and work for us seasonally in a wide variety of positions, do internships with us, and we interact with the university in a lot of different ways. But the biggest thing that I tell people is to work in recreation, to work in our field, you've got to be willing to work when other people are getting to play. And that means a lot of nights and weekend hours. And that's usually a significant struggle for a lot of people that I see in the field. We just had a rec programmer that left us in the end of August because of the weekend commitment. He actually went back to school and ended up becoming a teacher and left the position with our department because of that. The other thing is get experience now if this is something you're interested in. Really, it applies to any field. Whatever it is you think you want to do in life, get experience in that area now because it's competitive. When we're interviewing people, I'm looking for, and this doesn't always go over in the academic world real well, I've never looked at someone's GPA. I've hired a lot of people for full-time positions, full-time employment, never asked for transcripts, never looked at GPA, okay? I've looked at what have they done in the field? Have they done work? Even entry level. Have you officiated? Have you coached? Have you done things in the field that you're looking to enter and gotten that experience? Because you can go and make, maybe $1 more an hour doing something else, but really working in the field you want to be in will give you some more of a chance, more of a leg up as you go into that employment opportunity. And really that's true with any field. And then I mentioned the internship. Internship's really important. Go somewhere where they're going to treat you like part of the staff and value you, not make you an errand person or getting everybody caught. So I always also like to talk about parks and recreation, especially whitewater classes, because how many of you are from Illinois? Wow. First time ever. That I am shocked. So a lot of people, so is everybody from Wisconsin? Anybody not from Wisconsin? Cool. All right. So other states, Illinois is the most common one. Minnesota has some of this, and California. There may be a couple other states that I'm not as familiar with. They have what's called park district legislation. So that you can form a park, you've heard of park districts in Illinois? Okay, maybe not. It's a little bit different. They're not part of a municipal park and rec department. Okay? What it means is they're their own entity. They set their own tax rate. So like a school district, they set their own tax levy for their area. Okay? And a lot of times that leads to some greater funding opportunities. Because in a municipal setting with a Parks and Recreation Department, you're competing with the fire department, the police department, streets, public works, finance. There's all these different departments, and everybody's kind of, trying to use the tax dollars most efficiently. Whereas a park district, you set your own tax rate, you get your own pot of money, but then you have to contract out for things like police services, accounting, finance. Some departments do it in-house, some contract out depending on their size. But that's a big difference between a park district and a Parks and Recreation department. Wisconsin doesn't have legislation that allows the formation of a park district. So some of the benefits, obviously the autonomy of the funding source. You'll note if you travel in Illinois, a lot of the communities have these gorgeous, gorgeous recreational facilities. Whether it's aquatic centers, golf courses, rec centers, ball diamond complexes, whatever it may be. And in Wisconsin, in some communities, we've lagged a little bit behind in terms of facilities. It just depends on the community and what priority they've placed on. The reality is, and why I think Parks and Recreation is so important, is it'll oftentimes be one of the two key contributing factors to why someone chooses to live in a community. Okay? The world's a lot smaller place than it used to be. Okay? Part of that's the automobile, part of it's technology. You can get anywhere, right? So people choose to live in a community that they don't necessarily work in. And people are looking at schools and quality of life. And I think Parks and Recreation has a huge part of quality of life of why someone's going to choose to live in a community. Okay? If you're an avid cyclist, are you going to live in a community with no bike trails or no amenities for that? You know, if you're a diehard swimmer, are you going to live in a community that doesn't have a pool? You know, those are the kind of things that, as you will move on from the university and maybe one day get married, have kids, those are all things you'll look at as you look at where you live. And we see a lot of people in Whitewater that work here in Whitewater that don't live here. And we're trying to change that. But it's a struggle because the cost of living here in the community is a little greater than it is to live in an Elkhorn or Fort Atkinson or Milton. And part of that is university housing. It just drives the price of everything up a little bit. So, happy to answer any questions or cover anything that I haven't or what questions you guys may have. Yeah.
I don't really know if this question makes a lot of sense, but I'm kind of interested in like marketing.
Sure.
How big of a part does marketing play in your department since more like government run?
Right. I think it's the single most important thing because if we don't tell people what we're doing and what we have available, what good is it if people don't know it's there? Some of you got here early. I passed around a brochure. Can I grab yours just to show? So when I got here, it was this awful newspaper thing that no one would ever want to look at. And then we upgraded it to a little bit better format. And then this was our first rendition of this, really more elaborate than just Parks and Recreation. It talks about all city services. And we have the biggest portion in here because we put it together and have all of our programs listed here. But it also gives a little blurb on each of the other departments and city offerings. This goes to every resident's mailbox. It's online. We see a tremendous online use of the things that we put out there. They mass. That's where we see about 75 to 80% of our program registration is done online, and we're a little bit over 50% of our facility reservations are done online as well. We'd like to have both numbers a lot closer to 100%, but realize we're not quite there yet. In terms of staff and marketing, we ask our programmers to market what they do. We do a monthly newsletter that goes out by email. We send that, I believe it goes now to about 1,200 email addresses, but that's been built up over an 8-year period of time. Whitewater's unique. We don't have a TV station. We don't have a dedicated newspaper, with the exception of the Whitewater Register that comes out on every Thursday and has more information about Burlington and East Troy in it than Whitewater. So we're in this media void where everybody in town takes a different paper, whether it's the Janesville Gazette, the Jefferson County Daily Union, the Wisconsin State Journal. There isn't a great viewership of any of one paper by the majority of Whitewater. So we have to rely a lot on our own things, a lot of word of mouth. We try and encourage current program participants to kind of creatively look at how they can reach out to other people and get other people in. We do a lot of recruitment through the schools. Each school has an open house in the fall. We try to have a table and promote what we do, because we really look at the Whitewater School District as our service area, not just the city of Whitewater. Other questions? Yeah.
So the youth sports programs like basketball and soccer,
Yep.
and football, does that all run through your office?
Interesting. We've partnered a lot with the parent groups. So when I first got here, we had, our baseball and softball was ran by a group of parent volunteers. And one of my first meetings was with the baseball coach and the former baseball coach that came in to introduce themselves to me and said, here's this baseball program we want you to take. And so we've taken over baseball and softball. We've ran that now. This will be our 8th year running baseball and softball. Football, we've ran flag football separate since 2008 was our first year running flag football. We've partnered with our tackle football board, and now kind of seamlessly, we handle all the registration, we take care of the officials, those kind of things, whereas we let the board be the football experts. And what's unique about that whole situation is I joined the tackle football board in 2007 when I got here. And the meeting was basically breakfast and complain about the high school football coach. That's what that meeting was. Every one Saturday a month, get together, have breakfast, and complain about the high school football coach. And what I did was, it was kind of out of necessity at the time. I had to find a couple of friends to, when there was an opening, I'd say, hey, we should really consider this dad. He's the coach, does a great job. And what ended up happening was, out of my own survival to not have to listen to them complain about the football coach, I had to bring in a couple of good people. And the first 2 people I brought in was Tom Brzezinski, who was a former Warhawk football player and the principal at Washington Elementary School, and Chris Arnett, who was on lacrosse's last national championship football team, owns the bus company, or is part owner of the bus company here in Whitewater, Nelson Bus. I brought both of those guys on. I'm now the longest tenured board member. We've changed over the whole board and have went from a really poorly functioning organization to a very, and most of the credit goes to Tom, because once he got there, he became the president and it kind of snowballed from there, but we've really changed that. Really proud of the fact that this year, we, with our youth football program, we saw declining numbers. Everybody's seeing declining numbers in tackle football. And we came up with the idea, and I don't think it's anything revolutionary that we did, some other communities are doing it too. We said, all right, we're going to put these kids in shoulder pads and helmets, and we're going to play flag football. Has anybody seen a youth flag football game? It's dangerous. It's fast, it's quick. Kids, spin around quicker than, they're fast. They don't always have control of what they're doing, but it's a fast game. And by putting helmets, shoulder pads in them, we almost doubled the number of kids we had in the program. We had 40 kids participating in 4th and 5th grade, what we called hybrid football, and we played against Jefferson, town just to the north of us. They had 2 teams, we had 2 teams. Worked really, really well. The feedback on the program was amazing. And now we're going to look to do the same thing at the 2nd and 3rd grade level next year, putting those guys in helmet and shoulder pads, make it a little safer. But the other nice thing about it is they get used to wearing the equipment. So now, 6th grade is the first time you're playing tackle football in Whitewater, and that's a big change from when I got here, kindergartners playing tackle football. So, and then the other unique thing is, 4 of our board members on the youth football this past season became part of the high school football coaching staff, with Tom, who was the president of or is still the president of the youth level, is now the head football coach at the high school. We're hopeful that that kind of creates a really good cohesion and consistency in the program. Basketball is interesting. We run an instructional program for kindergarten through 3rd grade on Saturday mornings, and then we have a volunteer youth basketball board that runs the traveling program for 4th through 8th grade. And there's a direct tie that both high school coaches sit on that board and help steer the ship for our youth basketball board. And then we have a partnership agreement with them. We take their registration, we help with some of the administrative pieces, and let the experts coach. And I happen to be the president of our youth basketball board.
Where does the money go with that?
The money?
Does it go to the high school or?
No, it depends on the program. If it's a program that we run, okay, it supports the program. So we have a fee recovery policy that says if we charge $100, if it costs us $100 to run a program, we have to bring 115 in. So we're trying to offset some of our costs administratively of running the programs. Okay. With the youth basketball board, it all stays with that youth basketball board. Okay. Our small little youth basketball organization had $38,000 in expenses last year. And we brought in a little bit more than that in revenue. But it basically, they're set up to sustain themselves. Any other questions? Joe, anything you wanted me to talk about that I didn't?
Well, I think that you mentioned Jefferson. How often do you have to get other communities doing similar things so you can have opposing teams?
Every program that we run from a youth sports standpoint, we don't have enough kids. I'd love to have enough kids to run our own in-house program. But we rely on working with a lot of our neighboring parks and recreation departments who also run similar programs to create leagues. And when I first got here, we were in the strangest baseball league you would ever see. It was called the Cactus League. Half the teams in the league were club level teams, and the other half were park and rec departments. And it just wasn't a good mix. The club teams are killing the park and rec teams, like Elkhorn. Anybody from Elkhorn in here? Okay, good. We had the Elkhorn Club and the Elkhorn Park and Rec teams playing each other. And it was like 24-0, and you got parents almost in fist fights after the game, and it was just who are the cool kids and who's got money versus everybody else. And we worked really hard with a lot of the local park and rec departments to form our own recreation-based baseball and softball league. There's challenges because, you know, as Joe referenced, what we think is great is only good for us, okay? And when we go and talk to these other communities, they may like an idea or may think, hey, we can maybe do that, but you really got to work with these other communities in forming a comprehensive set of rules for the leagues. Our leagues require that if you have more than one team at an age level, you have to have a player evaluation. You have to document that you've evenly divided the talent on your teams. And it's really obvious at the end of the season when one team at an age level from your community goes 14-0 and the other goes 1-13, that somebody didn't do a really good job of that. So, and everybody works really hard to make sure that that's the case, so that everybody's got a good experience. Youth sports is really interesting. I talked to a class last week where about half of the group wanted to be high school athletic directors. And I shook my head. I mean, is anybody here, is that one of your goals? You want to be a high school athletic director? Okay. Do you know what a high school athletic director does? You got a pretty good idea? Okay. So I've coached high school sports for most of my life. And I feel I feel that they have an awful job. And I've got some friends that are athletic directors. I think they spend about 80% of their day dealing with parents who are upset about a coach or have a completely unrealistic set of expectations for their son or daughter. And that is 80% of their day. Then they're being asked to teach a couple classes because nobody can afford a full-time athletic director anymore. So I know our high school athletic director here in Whitewater has a weight training course that he teaches as well as a section of health that he teaches. And then the other 6 hours of his day he gets to deal with parents. So it's not maybe the glamorous, fun job that it used to be when parents came and sat on their hands and clapped when somebody did something well and went home and told Johnny and Susie they had a great game. That's really changed at the high school level, and from what I'm hearing, it's starting to change a little bit at the college level as well. We're being warned, we just had our Park and Rec conference the first week of November. We're being warned that you are not far removed from having a parent come in and sit at an interview with a child. That is going to become an expectation that if you want to recruit and retain quality individuals, that don't be surprised when a parent insists on sitting in on the interview. I know that they won't be working for me, but that'll have to be an adjustment that I make in my life, because one of the first things I try and tell our employees at the high school level is, I didn't hire your mom or dad, I hired you, and I've always looked at it as a way for them to learn some skills away from mom and dad, that they might have to fill out some paperwork and take care of themselves. So. But I mean, parents are much more involved, whether it's youth sports, hiring, you name it, they're more involved today than they've ever been. Because I know what my parents' answer would have been if I needed them to go to an interview with me. Probably, hopefully some of you feel the same way. So when I first walked in, some people were mentioning the show Parks and Recreation. I enjoyed the show immensely, if anyone saw it. But there were about 2 things in the whole, however many seasons there were, that were real. And that was one of my favorite episodes where they got a call, the kids were at the dog park throwing bags of poop at each other. And that is something that's the kind of call you get. Those are kind of real life things. And the other thing is, every time they had a public meeting on the show, someone in the crowd is talking about something that has nothing to do with the topic that's being discussed at the public meeting. And that happens almost every time. But the rest of it was, kind of far-fetched. So, entertainment value though.
So Matt, if you're saying 80% for an AD, what's an average day for you? What's your,
Sure.
I'm sure there's no average day, but.
But that's one of the cool things about the job, is that it's something always different. My position's really evolved from when I first started here. I was dealing a lot with our youth and adult sports, and now my involvement tends to be more on when I'm volunteering my own time. We have a programmer who's dedicated to our youth and adult sports programming, and really allows me to do more of the things that they pay me to do. About 4 years ago, I was given facility management for the city. So we have 8 city buildings that I'm responsible for. I spend more time than you can imagine dealing with this faucet doesn't work, this urinal isn't operating correctly. What I really enjoy doing for my job is the long-range planning, putting together capital improvement plans, 5-year projections. We've got to do this roof in 2018. We've got to finish this park development in 2020, and working with our council and elected officials that we've got funding dedicated to accomplish the goals of that 5-year plan. I still deal with the occasional stuff covering for staff if they're on vacation in regards to rec programs. But I spend a lot of time going to meetings. That's what nobody tells you, is pretty much any career you enter into, you spend more of your time at meetings you don't want to be at than you'd care to admit. This morning we had a project management team meeting, first thing. Then I got some time in the office to get caught up on some paperwork. Then I had a meeting with the city manager to go over some long-range planning things, and we try and get together every couple of weeks just to kind of catch up on where things are at. I've got this afternoon, and then when I leave you guys, as long as it's not pouring rain, I'm heading to our ice rink to finish putting up our sideboards for the ice rink for the winter.